Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to another episode of Gills in the Blood TV. And after a decent enough response to the first one, I'm going to carry on and do these little match day reviews of the pre-season games that I attend. So we'll be looking back in this episode at Saturday's 0-0 draw back at the Priestfield with League One outfit Reading. Yeah, thought it was a decent game overall for a 0-0 for a second friendly of the summer. I mean, I don't think we turned up with huge amounts of expectation, either fan base for, 5 goals, 6 goals, 7 goals or anything like that. But I thought in terms of the work rate and the application and the entertainment from both sides, it was a decent game. So yeah, let's get stuck into this one and have a look back on the 90 minutes that unfolded in Kent. First half, Gills went fairly strong and lined up in a 4-2-3-1 formation, which you can see on the screen in the corner. It was Glenn Morris in goal. It was a back four of Ramo Hutton, captain Connor Masterson, Shad Ogie, trialist, who we think is Lenny Serino, and then it was Robbie McKenzie and Amani Little patrolling in the middle of the park. We had Marcus Wiley from the right, Joe Bode off the left, Bradley Dack in the number 10 role, supporting lone striker Seb Palmer Holden. There were no substitutes. Well, there might have been a couple of kids, but to all intents and purposes, it was two separate sides again. I thought Reading started the first half the better. I remember saying to Boz after about 5-10 minutes, I thought, oh, this is going to be, a very different test to Dover. And I'd said in the review of the Dover game that it looked like a game where we'd spent time on the training pitch just looking at on the ball shape rather than out of possession shape. So I was thinking, oh, this is going to have to be a game where we've hopefully looked at a lot of defensive work. But to be fair to the Gills, they quickly grew into the game after that little sort of early foray from the Royals. And I thought we bossed it for decent periods of that first half. Not loads and loads of clear-cut chances. I'd say more nearly moments, but certainly positives again. And the first one for me was a young man who came off the bench in the game against Dover and was a threat second half, and that was Joe Bode again. Yeah, straight away, wanted to get at his right back. Thought he was ably supported by the young left back on trial, Serino. Was willing to go on the outside again, was willing to get to the byline to get the ball into the box, was willing to cut inside, picked his moments well, when to retain possession or when to try and make things happen more quickly. And yeah, it's just a couple of clips and examples of Joe being a threat.
Kept you in, I think.
He didn't go out, he just stopped.
There's one clip there where you can see the ball gets recycled, and that brings me on to the next positive of the first half, and that was the young left back on trial, who I thought was very decent on the whole. I think he got spun once by his man, the right winger, and left him for dead. But aside from that, I thought he was generally very solid. It's tough for trialists, isn't it? You're coming into an environment that's new. You don't know everyone. You don't know how the team plays. You're having to impress on the training pitch and impress very quickly. But yeah, I thought he done very, very well. He didn't just concentrate on one aspect of the game. He didn't just say, right, I'm going to let the football match play in front of me. He said, I'm going to do that defensive side, but I'm also going to try and support Joe Bode when I can. I'm going to try and get into the opposition half and be a threat. And I think there was a clip in that Joe Bode section where you can see that he was willing to be a runner, to get on the outside when Joe drifted into the middle of the park. And there was one really good bit of defensive work, which we'll show you now. And for the third real positive of the first 45, it's the same player that was very, very good in the opening 45 minutes against Dover on Tuesday night. And I thought he was the best player on the pitch, not just on our side. I'm talking about Bradley Dack again. There are certainly signs that, for me, firstly, Bradley is really trusting his body now. I thought there were small signs of it at the back end of last season. But from what I've seen in his two sets of 45 minutes so far, he really trusts himself. He trusts the knees. He trusts the body in general. There's a lot more of an aggressive nature to Dacky, I want to say, in this game. And that was probably because we didn't have the ball all the time. So we had to get stuck in. There was a couple of whacks that he took. He won one free kick after flicking it round the centre midfielder and leaving him for dead in the middle of the park. And the bloke just had to rugby tackle him to the floor. He took another whack, didn't he, over the far side from where we were sat in the Gordon Road, right in front of the benches. And I think everyone of a Gillingham persuasion probably followed Bradley Dack for a minute or so after that rather than the game. But luckily, he didn't go to one of them knees. And he clutched at what looked like a dead leg, and he managed to run it off, and he had an influence on the football match. We've got some clips here of Dacky getting into those positions that we know are his trademark. We saw it in that first spell at Gillingham that led to his move to Blackburn. We saw him do it for 3 years at Rovers in League One and then the Championship. Just a case of, you know, just fine-tuning and polishing everything up at the moment. There's a couple of clips where you see that he plays a pass. One he overhits, one I think he should shoot. And Boz said exactly the same on the Matchday Live. You may even hear Boz say that in the clip. And one great chance where he arrives late in the box, as he has done for most of his career, but doesn't hit the target. But signs for me that Bradley is getting back to somewhere near his very best. Another one who really stood out for me was Shad Ogie, who we know has got loads of ability. He's got everything you want in a modern day centre-back. He offers that balance because he's left-footed, he's strong, he's powerful, he's athletic, he loves a tackle, he's quick. But we know he has these moments. But I thought he was super solid for 45 minutes against Reading. And yes, the caveat is, again, it's a pre-season friendly, so we're not getting carried away with any of these positives. But you can only watch the game and you can only assess what you've seen. And I thought he was really good, Shad. Never once got beaten for pace, generally won everything in the air. And as you can see by this clip, very unlucky not to open the scoring just before half-time, which, again, was from a Bradley Dack delivery.
Oh, you were almost spot on, you pulled it.
Second period started and it was a case of two different approaches from the two sides. Reading, like I say, had named an 11, so they made one change at the break and then made more substitutions throughout the second period, whereas Gills completely switched up their 11. So we started the second half in a 4-4-2 formation. It was Jake Turner in goal. It was a back four of Harry Webster, Sam Gale, the returning Andy Smith and captain Max Clark. The quartet in front from right to left was Damien Theodore, Harry Waldock, Ethan Coleman and Jack Nolan. And it was the same front two that had started at Dover. It was Harry Bridle supporting Josh Andrews. Game probably lacked a bit of fluidity in the second period. We took a while to get up to speed against a team that had already played the first half. But once we did that, we were more than competitive again. Harry Waldock looked decent enough in the middle of the park with Ethan Coleman, who's showing signs that how important a pre-season is, I think, firstly, and that he's getting back to the levels that won him Player of the Year in 23-24. Harry Webster was another one I picked up on. He's noticeably filled out from the back end of last season to where we are now, certainly since when we saw him in the first team before that loan spell at Chatham. So fingers crossed that he can follow the same sort of path as Joe Baudet and Sam Gale more recently. But yeah, it was a decent watch, like I say, for a 0-0. It was one of the better ones, and there certainly were positives from a Gills perspective again. I think it's fair to say, and I think the player admitted himself, that Jack Nolan was massively underwhelming during 24-25. We signed him off the back of an absolutely brilliant season, didn't we, at Accrington Stanley the year before, and we just didn't get the Jack Nolan that we knew or we thought we'd signed. Tuesday, I thought he did okay at Dover for a first appearance, but I thought he was miles better yesterday against high-level opposition, and that can only be a good thing for Jack's confidence and for us as a fan base and Gillingham Football Club, because you can't have too many good players. Delivery was absolutely spot on, and we'll show you some examples of that in a couple of seconds. But most important, look, for me, he looks a lot leaner, and there was a bigger willingness to run out of possession. I think there was one example where he ran all the way from the left wing. He kept the ball a couple of times, rode a couple of challenges, and then it sort of bobbled away from him. Didn't just stop, was all the way over to the right-hand side to close down the left winger to try and win the ball back. And there was a couple of examples of that where he was willing to go and chase down defenders and press from the front and win possession back for us. But yeah, in terms of an attacking sense, very, very good. And here's some examples of his delivery that was on point.
Garrett was lobbing that in.
Second big positive to come out of that 45 minutes after the interval for me was the performance of Josh Andrews, and it's well documented. I've spoken about it 1,000 times. Everybody knows about his injury problems, but he's put now together back-to-back 45 minutes, and I thought he looked a genuine threat Saturday afternoon against Reading. He was up against, you know, big season centre halves, proper players, and that's with no disrespect to Dover Athletic, but I thought he was probably better against Reading than what we saw against Dover in the week. Just needs minutes now, doesn't he? And similar to what we've said about Bradley Dack, he just needs to start trusting his body again. And he took a whack early on in that second half. Bloke just went straight through the back of him. We rightly were awarded a free kick, but Josh just bounced straight up, and that's what we want to see. We need him to trust his body. We need him to realise that not every time he gets a whack means he's going to be out for a month or 2 months or even longer. He's a big lad, so he's going to be a threat at this level if we can keep him on the park. But yeah, it's probably more mentally than physically for Josh Andrews at the moment. He needs to realise that his body will hold up, and it did hold up for 45 minutes, and there was a couple of really good moments. We'll show you the clips here. The first one is him chasing down the ball after Harry Bridle attempts a flick on, probably gets fouled, but Josh beats his man to the ball and then opens his legs and runs powerfully into a dangerous area. No option, so he stands up. The centre half holds it off, some good feet to get the ball going, and Harry Waldock, who was very good, unfortunately plays a poor ball into the box. And then, yeah, a couple of moments where he doesn't quite get on the end of a cross and then does get on the end of one. So here they are now.
You're on, Sam Gale. Go on, Josh!
And that's exactly what we want Josh Andrews doing. That's exactly what we want our centre forward doing, isn't it? If we're going to play two up top, like we've seen Josh operating so far, or if we're going to play a lone striker like we've seen Seb Palmer Holden do, and we might see Elliot Nevitt and Sam Vapes do when they come back to fitness. But again, he's got everything you want in a centre forward, Josh. And when we've seen him play, I think every time I've seen him play, he's looked good. We just haven't seen it enough. The cross that he doesn't quite get at the end of probably comes with more minutes and more time on the pitch with his teammates, because he makes the runs, the great run, isn't it? He sort of drifts towards the middle and then peels off to the back post, but just doesn't quite read it quick enough to get there. And then he's unlucky with a header. He jumps with Andy Smith, and I think it might be a combination of both of them. But it's an example of Andrews getting in the right areas, and that can only be a good thing for him, and that can only be a good thing for us. So yeah, to conclude, again, like I've said right at the beginning of the video, it was a decent watch for a 0-0. It's one of the better ones I've watched. I've watched plenty of bore draws throughout my time watching Gills, certainly in recent years. And we're going to have people like Josh Andrews and Elliot Nevitt and Sam Vokes and Seb Palmer Holden firing. And we're going to have people like Bradley Dack and Jack Nolan, Joe Bode, Aaron Rowe when he's back, being creative, making things happen, getting defenders turned and running towards their own goal. But if you'd said to me after 180 minutes of pre-season that most players would have got a 90 in the tank, or a 45 in Andy Smith's case, then I think we'd have been more than happy. If we can get the other six back sooner rather than later, the likes of Rowe and Nevitt and Vokes and Kambeni and Williams, then obviously we'd be better for it. Like I've said, you can't have too many good players to choose from. I know Gareth's spoken about the need for a smaller squad, but I like the group, and we have to hope that this is the start of something rather than we've just seen them improve at the back end of last season to play for contracts. But yeah, certainly loads of positives. Back-to-back clean sheets, a win and a draw. One coming against, you know, a team from the level above. And I know it is only pre-season, but that's good for the confidence. And still unbeaten in any type of football match under Gareth Ainsworth. So that can only be a good thing. Right, that's enough from me today. Hope you've enjoyed this one. If we can hit 50 likes again, that'd be really, really good. So thank you for all your support. Thanks for all those that have watched the match day live. Please consider hitting that like button, like I've said. Please hit subscribe. We're getting so close now to 3,800 subscribers. If we can get there before the season starts, that would be brilliant. Thank you to any Reading fans if you have watched. I do appreciate it, and good luck for the season in League One. yeah, be back next Saturday with another Matchday Live as we take on recently relegated Luton Town. A bit of a fall of grace for the Hatters, who were in the Premier League as recently as 2 years ago. But next season we'll be plying their trade against Reading in League One. So we've got that to look forward to. But until then, hope you have a good week. And of course, up the Gills.